I'm standing here on the coast of Cornwall, watching the waves. I've been watching them for nearly an hour now, and I've noticed something peculiar. Each wave seems to rise with such determination, such urgency, as if it has somewhere important to be. It crests, it crashes, it dissolves into foam and spray, and then nothing, as if it never existed at all. There's a wave approaching now. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah the wave. She's gathering momentum, pulling water into herself, growing taller, more defined. She's becoming someone. Something. An individual entity, separate from all the other waves around her. And I imagine, if Sarah could think, if she could feel, she would be terrified right now, because ahead of her lies the shore, the rocks, the inevitable end. She's racing toward her own destruction, and she knows it. Every meter closer is a meter less of existence. Every second that passes is a second stolen from her brief, precious life. But here's what I want you to consider. What if Sarah's entire fear is based on a fundamental misunderstanding? What if the tragedy isn't what she thinks it is? You see, Sarah believes she is a wave, a separate individual wave with a beginning and an end. She believes she was born somewhere out there in the deep water, and she will die here on this shore. And between those 2 points, birth and death, lies everything that matters: her identity, her purpose, her existence. But what if I told you that Sarah was never really a wave at all? What if she was always the ocean, just temporarily pretending to be something separate? This is not just a metaphor about waves, this is a metaphor about you, about me, about every human being who has ever lived and died and feared that death. We are all Sarah, racing toward our inevitable shore, clutching desperately at our individuality, our separateness, our precious sense of I. And we are all making the same mistake she is. Let me ask you something. When did you begin? Not when were you born, that's too easy. When did you begin? When did this sense of I that you carry around like a badge, like a burden, when did it actually start? Was it at conception? But you weren't conscious then. You weren't thinking I am. You were just cells dividing, following ancient instructions written in molecules. Was it at birth? But newborns don't have a sense of self yet. They don't distinguish between themselves and their mother, between their body and the world. That comes later. Maybe it was when you first recognized yourself in a mirror, when you first said the word I, when you first felt that peculiar sensation of being a separate observer, locked inside a body, looking out at a world that is fundamentally other. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That moment, whenever it was the moment you fell for the greatest illusion in human experience, the illusion of separation. I've spent 30 years studying philosophy, traveling to monasteries in Tibet, sitting with shamans in Peru, discussing consciousness with neuroscientists in California. And everywhere I go, every tradition I study, I find the same insight expressed in different languages. The separate self is a fiction, a useful fiction perhaps, a necessary fiction for survival, but a fiction nonetheless. The Buddhists call it anatta, no self. The Hindus speak of Atman, the individual soul that is identical to Brahman, the universal consciousness. The Sufis say, I am the truth. Even modern physics, with its quantum entanglement and field theories, suggests that separation is less fundamental than connection. But we don't feel that way, do we? We feel separate, isolated, alone in our own heads. You are in there, behind your eyes, and I am in here, behind mine, and between us lies an unbridgeable gap. Or so it seems. Let me try something. Right now, as you listen to my voice, pay attention to your sense of self. Where is it located? Most people, if you ask them, will point to their head. The I lives somewhere behind the eyes, in the brain, in the skull. That's where you are, right? But is that really true? When you feel pain in your foot, aren't you also in your foot? When you feel butterflies in your stomach, aren't you also there? When you feel your heartbeat, when you breathe, when you sense the weight of your body, aren't you distributed throughout your entire physical form? And it doesn't stop there. Your body is constantly exchanging matter and energy with the environment. The oxygen you breathe in becomes part of you. The food you eat becomes your cells. The carbon dioxide you exhale becomes part of the trees. The atoms in your body right now were once part of stars, part of oceans, part of dinosaurs and ancient forests. So where exactly do you end and the not you begin? Is there actually a clear boundary, or is that boundary just another story we tell ourselves? Now we arrive at the heart of the paradox, the place where language starts to fail us and logic begins to eat its own tail. Because if there is no separate self, if the I is an illusion, then who is experiencing this illusion? Who is reading these words? Who is having these thoughts? This is where most people get stuck. They say, well, I must exist because I'm experiencing something. Descartes was right. I think, therefore I am. And that seems irrefutable, doesn't it? The one thing you cannot doubt is that something is happening, that experience is occurring. But notice the trick in that sentence. I think, therefore I am. It assumes that thinking requires a thinker, that experience requires an experiencer, that there must be a subject separate from the object, an observer separate from the observed. But what if that's backwards? What if there's just thinking, without a thinker? Just experience, without an experiencer? Just the universe knowing itself, experiencing itself through this particular configuration of matter and energy that you call you? Let me put it another way. You are so afraid of death. We all are. It's perhaps the most fundamental fear we have. The fear that one day, this I, this precious sense of self, will simply cease to exist. That there will be nothing where once there was something. That you will be erased from existence. But what if I told you that you were never really here in the first place? That there was never a separate you to die? The what you call you is just a temporary pattern, a brief eddy in the river of existence, a wave that the ocean is making. Does that make it better or worse? I honestly don't know, but I think it changes everything. Think about your dreams. When you dream, you create entire worlds, entire characters, entire narratives. There are other people in your dreams. They talk to you. They have their own personalities, their own apparent autonomy. But when you wake up, you realize all of those people were you. They were all aspects of your own consciousness, playing different roles. Now expand that. What if this waking reality is similar? What if all of us, every person you've ever met, every consciousness that has ever existed, are like characters in the universe's dream, separate from each other in the story, but ultimately all expressions of the same underlying reality? The mystics have been saying this for millennia. Tattvam asi, the Upanishads declare, thou art that. You are not a part of the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself from a particular point of view. And here's where it gets really strange. If that's true, then the universe is not something external to you. It's not something you're inside of. It's something that's inside you. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. I want to tell you about something that happened to me 15 years ago. I was in India, in a small ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas. I'd been meditating for hours, days really, trying to understand this very question. Who am I? What am I? And then, for just a moment, the question disappeared. Not because I found an answer, but because the questioner vanished. There was no I asking, who am I? There was just awareness, vast, open, empty awareness, and everything, the sound of birds, the feeling of my breath, the sensation of sitting, the thoughts arising and dissolving, all of it was happening within that awareness, not to a separate me. It only lasted a few seconds, maybe not even that long. And then the I came rushing back, like a wave reforming, and immediately began trying to grasp what had just happened, to own it, to make it into a memory, an experience that I had. But in that brief gap, I understood something that I can't quite put into words even now. I understood that consciousness is not something I have, it's something I am. Or rather, it's something that is happening, and I is just a thought arising within it. You see, we have it backwards. We think consciousness is a product of the brain, a byproduct of neural activity, something that emerges from matter. And maybe in some sense that's true, but it's also true that matter, brain, neurons, all of these are experiences arising within consciousness. You've never experienced anything outside of consciousness. You've never touched matter directly, never seen the real world as it is. Everything you've ever known has been an experience within awareness. So which is more fundamental, the matter or the consciousness, the ocean or the wave? Here's what I think happens. The universe, this vast infinite field of potential, temporarily forgets itself. It contracts into a point of view, into a perspective, into what we call a self. And from that contracted perspective, it experiences limitation, separation, fear, desire, all the drama of being human. But why? Why would the infinite choose to experience itself as finite? Why would the ocean pretend to be a wave? Maybe for the same reason you watch movies, read novels, play games. To experience something different. To forget for a while what you really are. To lose yourself in a story. And what a story it is. The story of you. Unique, unrepeatable, precious. Every joy, every sorrow, every mundane moment, and every profound realization, all of it is the universe experiencing itself, knowing itself, through your particular configuration. You are not an accident. You are not insignificant. You are the universe's way of being conscious in this particular way, in this particular place, at this particular time. And when you die, when this wave crashes on the shore, the ocean doesn't die. It just stops pretending to be this particular wave. So what do we do with this? How do we live, knowing or suspecting that we are not who we think we are? Does it matter how we act if we're just temporary patterns in an infinite field? I think it matters more, not less. Because if you are not separate from the universe, then everything you do to others, you do to yourself. Every act of kindness is the universe being kind to itself. Every act of cruelty is the universe harming itself. The separation that allows us to hurt each other without feeling it directly. That's the illusion. The truth is, we are all connected, all one, all expressions of the same underlying reality. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It changes how you live. When you realize that the homeless person on the street is not separate from you, that they are you experiencing a different set of circumstances, compassion becomes natural. Not because you should be compassionate, but because you are them, and they are you. But there's something else, something even more immediate. If you are not the wave but the ocean, then you are not your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances. You are the awareness in which all of these arise. And that awareness is vast, spacious, untroubled by the content that appears within it. Your anxiety, your depression, your fear, these are real, these are valid, but they are not you. They are weather patterns moving through the sky of your consciousness. And the sky is never damaged by the weather. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is not saying, just realize you're the universe and all your problems will disappear. The wave still crashes. The pain is still real, but there's a difference between being lost in the wave and knowing yourself as the ocean that is making the wave. I'm walking along the shore now. The tide is coming in. In a few hours, this beach will be underwater. The sandcastles that children built this morning will be gone. The footprints will be erased. And tomorrow, when the tide goes out again, it will be a different beach. Same location, different sand, different patterns. Is it the same beach or a different beach? Both. Neither. The question assumes a permanence that doesn't exist. You are like that beach, constantly changing, constantly being remade, never the same from one moment to the next. The you that started reading this is not the same you that is reading it now. Millions of cells have died and been replaced. Thousands of thoughts have arisen and dissolved. The pattern continues, but the substance is always changing. And yet something persists, not a thing, but a continuity, not a self, but a process. The ocean continues even as the waves come and go. So here's what I want to leave you with. You are not a mistake. You are not insignificant. You are not separate from the universe, struggling to survive in a hostile cosmos. You are the cosmos itself, experiencing what it's like to be you. And when your time comes, when your wave crashes on the shore, you will not disappear. You will return to what you always were. The ocean doesn't die when the wave dissolves. It just stops making that particular pattern. So live fully. Love deeply. Create, explore, question, wonder. Not because you're trying to make your brief existence meaningful, but because you are the universe's way of doing those things. You are how the cosmos knows itself. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. And the ocean has no fear of the shore.